Hey, so I think it's okay. The lighting is not that good, so I'm going to try to run my cell phone. Um, so good evening. Well, good morning. It's almost 6 in the morning, and I wanted to make something kind of special because today it's actually my first it's anniversary. Birthday. It's not birthday. It's anniversary since I decided to convert to Judaism, and it's a very important date for me. I'm all alone, but it doesn't matter. Um, so I'm sorry, there's music in the background, but someone in my family has the radio on day and night. That's probably why I barely sleep anything because the radio is always on, and it's bloody annoying, but that's what we have to deal with. It doesn't matter. Anyway, and I'm sorry about my baggy clothes, but we have what we can do, and I lost a lot of weight recently, so I look like I'm wearing Bigfoot's clothes instead of my own, but I used to be bigger, and these were my clothes. You wouldn't believe I have shirts that look like dresses on me now because of how big they look on me now. Anyway, that's not the topic of my video. I wanted to talk about my conversion, and this is really something that is really special to me because I was born in a Catholic family. And curiously, I did not know that I had Jewish roots, and I only found out first the person that helped me find out my Jewish roots. Uh, always suspected that I had them, but only when I started converting, I started noticing things that my family did that were Jewish. And some of them, it was actually him that found out because I would talk to him about my family, and he said, "Oh, that's so Jewish." And so it's incredible that I found that I have crypto Jewish roots, and it's absolutely lovely. And I don't know. So I don't know how to start. Maybe by the fact that so it's like I cannot start talking about my conversion without talking about my family history. So my family's history probably starts around the 1400s, and this is when the King of Spain launched some kind of ultimatum on our king that he had to expel Jews from Portugal if he wanted to marry that harlot Isabella of Spain. And of course, the king didn't want to expel the Jews because first he had really a lot of connections with Jews at the time, and they were good for business. And so instead, he decided to convert them forcefully to Christianity. And it's rather interesting because he didn't want them to leave. A lot of them wanted to leave rather than convert. So what he did, it was quite interesting that they would take priests to the ports and they'd sprinkle them with water and baptize them so they wouldn't have to leave my country. There are several stories about that king. But the thing is, Portuguese Jews were forced converted to Christianity. And there's actually a thing that is quite interesting because despite the Inquisition and all that, in the first years, the king wouldn't persecute Jews. They couldn't be Jewish outside of their homes, but no one would raid Jews and demand them to not be Jewish. It was just basically an interest deal with the King of Spain. But of course, later on, things started getting darker. The Spanish Inquisition came, and there's a lot of things. But so my city was around 40 to 50% Jewish, and when the Spanish Jews were expelled from Spain, it got to about 60% Jewish. So my city had a large Jewish community, and there are things that are really interesting. That when the King of Spain came to visit, um, there are certain documents about the king asking money to fund the travel expenses from the King of Spain to Portugal, and the city said, "We are bankrupt. Our new we're bankrupt. Some of the most outstanding citizens were arrested and had their possessions confiscated because they were Jews and stuff like that." So it's interesting that our city used to be prosper, but because of what happened during the Inquisition and how Jews were treated, this city lost its wealth. So the synagogue is the oldest in the Iberian Peninsula and potentially even Europe. I'm not sure. And it's one of the best preserved. It's actually undergoing preservation work now, so it's closed and it's in museum. And it was repaired by Samuel Schwartz, and it's an interesting place to visit in Tumar. But so this is the long story. Jews in Tumar were either left or forced converted to Christianity. And there are remnants in my city of crypto-Judaism, but the reason that it didn't survive to my generation, and the reason why so many crypto-Jews lost their identities, is because we have a peculiar situation in my area of the country. First, and we have, I'm sorry, my mascara. I'm sorry, it's makeup from yesterday. So the Jews from this area had to undergo centuries of persecution, and then on top of that, two things that mark the end of Judaism in this area are Salazar's dictatorship, where my cat did something and my mom is going against her. So Jews in this area had to first go persecutions and all that, and then there are two recent things and recent events that made crypto Jews in this area almost completely lose their identity and awareness of their Jewishness. There are still things that, if you're Jewish or if you're aware of crypto-Jewish behavior, you can trace, which is what we were able to find about my family. But other than that, it's hard because during Salazar's dictatorship, and this involves the last 3 to 4 generations. So in 3 to 4 generations, you completely lose every single trace of Jewishness, or almost completely. At least the belief system was severely undermined. And there are things that you think it's normal, that everyone does it, and you realize that only your family does it, because unlike most families, your family has Jewish roots, and something that you only notice that it's different when you compare it to other families, and you realize that other families don't do it. And these things keep on even after every single trace of Judaism is abandoned. Now, why I'm talking about this is the fact that even after three generations of dictatorship, some things in my family made it past the extensive bleaching of our crypto Jewishness. The most intense part was during the dictatorship of Salazar because every single child at school had to have Catholic classes and they would learn Catholicism in school. So every single Portuguese was subjected to that. So we have three generations that were forced to learn Catholicism at school. Now, in my generation, we were not obligated, but of course, my mom put me for those classes too. Um, so in short, in the last century, every single Portuguese was exposed to Catholic classes in public schools. During the dictatorship, it was mandatory. They had to pray every single morning, stuff like that. And then, of course, was the Fatima apparitions, that hoax that basically converted the entire country into a devout Catholicism because allegedly the Virgin Mary appeared here. And it's really close. It's about 30 kilometers from my city. So the entire center of the country and a lot, most of Portugal, especially this area, because everyone knows someone that was at the apparitions, was converted to Catholicism, and especially the Mary cult, because allegedly she appeared in Fatima. So this area of the country was heavily influenced. So any traces of of keeping Jewish habits and traditions in families was first because of the dictatorship, and also because of those apparitions. Every single trace of Jewishness, um, in terms of religious beliefs and avoiding the church, basically was lost because most people in this area became believers due to that hoax that was perpetrated by the church, the state, and so especially in this area, every Portuguese became a devout Christian because of that hoax. So a lot of crypto Jews in this area lost their identity. Now, in the particular case of my mother, she is a very special case because my grandparents were already Catholic, but they still preserved a lot of Jewish things. But my mom, she was indoctrinated at school, and then uh, one of her best friends' mothers took her to church and to cateches and all that, so she developed very pious Catholic habits. So on top of the state sponsored indoctrination, the fake apparitions, my mom became a very devout worshipper of Mary, and she learned she's angry at her mother because she'd never take her to church and all that, and she had to go with her friend's mother, and it's really she's really Catholic and really anti-Semitic. So this is the background that I have to work with. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because I have to explain how I became an atheist or agnostic for a long time. Um, so this is the background I came from. I came from a very, very, very Catholic environment. Um, and my mom, so she even recently recently she told me, because I told her that Mary wasn't a virgin, she had other children besides Jesus, and she was an adulterer, that she betrayed her husband. And my mom said, no, she was raped by men, and I should be raped because, like Jews do to all people. So it's really, there's a lot of anti Semitism in this area. And it's not only my mother. I have to go through a lot of things here because of reverting to Judaism. And then there's the other thing. The church here says that everything negative is associated with Jews. So as a child, going through Catholic school thing, catechism, I don't know. English is my fourth language, so please forgive me for butchering your language. Anyway, this is not okay. So I went through Catholic school, and I never accepted Jesus. I remember I prayed to Jesus sometimes because my mom told me to, but I never really accepted the whole concept. And it's like, it was weird how Jesus is God and he's not God and all that. And there are several instances in which my catechistas would be angry at me because I rebelled at their authority and would question their judgment on things. Sometimes I don't know, it's Our Father or whatever, the prayer that Jesus made up to God, or allegedly. There's a part that it says, "Forgive us as we forgive others," and I went to the catechism and said, "You told us that God forgives us when we pray this, but in fact, God only forgives us if we forgive other people." And she said, I was wrong. Then she called the priest, and the priest thought I was wrong, but then the priest called the other priest, and the other priest said I was right. There were quite a few of those instances. And one of the major things of dissent was Passover. Because for Passover, they celebrate Jesus' death instead of Passover, and they barely mention Passover at all. And I would say that it doesn't make sense that Passover is about escaping from Egypt, and that the whole Jesus thing was an appropriation. And of course, they got angry. Then when they taught us the commandments, that's basically. And I think I didn't. I hadn't. No, I didn't. I still didn't have my first communion, because I only had my first communion after I started learning at home, because they couldn't stand me. And I couldn't stand them, but that's besides the point. So when we learned the Ten Commandments, I said, but you worship Mary, you worship Jesus and statues. That's idolatry. And there are a few things in the commandments that I was pointing out to them, and they didn't like it. So from there on, whenever I started pointing out things, they'd take breaks and took us to the park to play, and we'd stay the rest of the day, instead of learning about God and stuff like that, playing in the park. And of course, I didn't want to go to catechism, and I didn't want to go. They didn't want me there. So my mom started asking if I could learn at home, and they were more than happy to let me learn at home. And so I still go because my mom wanted me to go sometimes. But it's the thing, when I started asking questions, when I started doing anything, they said, "Go to the playground. You've worked a lot. You deserve a break." They really didn't like me. So, especially since I started reading the Bible, I could not accept that the New Testament and the Old Testament were written and inspired by the same God. That they contradicted each other, and that's one of the major breaking points. I couldn't see the New Testament and the Old Testament as being a cohesive work, and there I had two choices: either get a severe case of cognitive dissonance and accept it all, become Jewish, which of course I didn't know what being Jewish was, because I was being taught that everything was evil. And sometimes they called me Jew because I was evil, and being Jewish was a synonym for evil and bad things. And so I never learned that what I believed in was basically Judaism. And so that's one thing. Everything bad is connoted as Judaism. So I never associated that the fact that I didn't accept the New Testament, Jesus or Mary, was because I was Jewish all along. And so I had that two options: either become Jewish, actually three, and that was the best option. But sadly, they told us Jews are evil, and when I said something that they deemed reprimandable, they called me Judas or Jewish or something like that. And it had a negative connotation. So I had the choice to live with cognitive dissonance, become Jewish, but of course they knew what they were doing. They were kind of making a connection with evil and Judaism to keep me away from Judaism, even though that didn't work. Or I had the option to become agnostic atheist, which is the route I took, because it's the thing: either you believe, you live in cognitive dissonance and believe that New Testament and Old Testament are cohesive. Either you only accept the Old Testament or the Tanakh, or you start believing that it's all a fantasy and it's all a lie. So, of course, between me and you, I became agnostic atheist. But it was not just because of the problem with the Bible. It was because my mother said, I said, I believe in God. I believe in God. But my mom said, you can't believe in God if you don't believe in Jesus. And she said it so many times that I ended up interiorizing that I didn't believe in God because I didn't believe in Jesus. So if Jesus doesn't exist, God doesn't exist as well. So that got in my mind for a long time. Sometimes I revert back to believing in religion, but overall, I mostly denied religion for most of my life. And it's the thing, they tried to exorcise me. My mom called me Judy a lot because I was evil. And either that or that I was Satan, possessed by the devil. Even priests wanted me to be exorcised. So there's a lot of negative things and about Catholic Church in my life. And it's curious, if only I had Jews around to help me out. And there's the thing, I have so much. And you know the song Jerusalem of Gold, and it's something that is really eerie because as a kid, I would have it always in my head. And at the time, I didn't know the name of the song. But last year, when it was the 70th birthday of Israel, I started hearing the song and I started crying. And I said, but this is the song that used to play in my head as a kid. I don't know where I heard it, but I had that song a lot in my head. There are a lot of things that connect me to Judaism that I don't know how to explain. And I know this is a lengthy video and I don't know where to start. There's just so much. Uh, but yeah, so I was Jewish all along and I didn't know. Fast forward a few years, and you realize that in high school, we learn a lot about religions, but they make sure that we have a negative idea of Judaism. Basically, we learn a lot about Hindus, about Muslims, and then what's Judaism? Judaism um, is bad, evil, or it's simply the denial of Christianity. That's what they teach you at school. And except in history, I had a teacher because we have this synagogue. Um, they showed us a lot about Judaism, but of course, there's that negative reinforcement that I got all these years associating the word Judaism with evil. Um, but the thing is, like when I went to the synagogue for the first time, it's such an amazing feeling. I don't know. It's weird, and I started it, going to the synagogue. Whenever I go there, it's really weird. I cannot explain this, but I'm going back to this point a little later because it got intensified as I aged. So when I was 14 to 15, I studied the Torah. I didn't have a Tanakh at the time. I studied the Bible. I studied the Quran. I studied a lot of religious books. And I was moving more and more towards Judaism. And it's weird that how these things intensified. So at 15, I started going, I think I went to the synagogue 5 or 6 times with school. Um, and things started becoming intensified. Then I went to university. That's where things started kicking in a lot. I was always fascinated by alchemy. I don't know, alchemy. I think it's alchemy. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, English is my fourth language. I'm sorry if I butcher it. But there's already a lot of languages in my mind, and I do my best. So I started studying alchemy. It was something that always fascinated me. And of course, I delved into some pretty intense stuff, like the Key of Solomon, and then I went into some Kabbalah, even some Christian Kabbalah and Jewish Kabbalah that was adapted to alchemy. And it's weird, whenever I started, something happened and I stopped. But as I did it, my soul started having a lot of shifts. And I find myself sometimes reverting back to believing in God, but I rejected. I refused to say that. And whenever my mom started trying to convert me to Christianity, I denied God to her because it was easier. I think it's the reason why I became agnostic atheist. It's easier to deny God uh, altogether, to be able to deny Jesus, then if you don't deny God, they will force you to accept Jesus. So if I denied everything, it was easier to have her off my back. I was just the evil Jew or the devil. It's easier than having her trying to convert me to Christianity, which, since I started converting to Judaism, it became more intense. She puts on the mess every single time on the radio. She puts it loud on the radio. It's really obnoxious, but we got to do what we got to do. So then I was 18 years when I started this Kabbalah and Jewish thing again. Then I stopped because my computer broke, and it's the thing. I started on and off with Kabbalah, and I think something shifted in me and got me ready for Judaism. I think that Kabbalah changed my soul somehow. and got me open to go back to God. Of course, it was just the start. There are other phases to this progress. Um, so again, um, I stopped studying Kabbalah. And then again, at 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, I started studying Kabbalah again. And this is one of the most, I think it's one of the most relevant things that happened in my life in terms of uh, Judaism, because and it's the thing. I moved in my life. I moved a lot when I was in university, and at the time I didn't know it. I only found out that I was living in the Jury Street in Coimbra after I started converting, because of course I started researching a lot. And it's the thing, and I think that's when things started to kick in more. I went back to studying Kabbalah, and soon after I moved to a house that is built on top of an ancient Jewish neighborhood, probably even on the top of the mikveh. We don't know, because I was living right in front of a synagogue that was converted to a church and later to a fado house, a music house, something like that. But it was a synagogue, and they were digging in that street, and they still haven't found the mikveh. And the location of my house was basically 5 meters away from the synagogue, so I could my apartment could be built on top of a mikveh, and I don't know. But herein starts the weird thing. At the time, uh, I was it was on my second year of university, so I was 19, 20 years old, as I said, and I started having dreams about children, a boy and a girl. They were around 2, 3 years old, and they were crying. And they said I had some sort of mission and that I was late in that mission. And I still don't know what that mission is about, but now considering when I started having those dreams that I was studying Kabbalah, I think it has something to do with my conversion. They said that before they can exist, that I had something I have to do. They never specified it, and it's really weird. I started dreaming about those children every single day, and every single day I woke up crying. I didn't know what they wanted, and that's the thing. I still don't know if it's about my Judaism or not, but I was living in a Jewish neighborhood and I didn't know it at the time. So again, there's a lot of things in my life leading up to that. Then I moved a lot of times, and I think I lived in actually 2 or 3 different Jewish neighborhoods in my lifetime without even being aware of it. So it's really a really curious thing. I didn't know it, and I'm fascinated with how I moved to Jewish neighborhoods so often in my life. So then I went to Japan, and I started studying Kabbalah again. I tell you, I started with Kabbalah a lot of times, and I could never get it right because the Torah was missing. It's what was missing in my life was Torah. Because I started, I studied the Torah without Kabbalah, then I studied Kabbalah without the Torah. I needed a guide. I really needed a guide, and it's amazing how much Judaism was present in my life from the start. And I'm not even mentioning everything. because there's a lot of experiences that I had that I'm not mentioning now because they're not coming to my mind because there's just so much, so much. So anyway, I came back to my city at a certain point, and I went back to my old pastime of going to the synagogue, but never quite entering it. That's the thing. I wanted to go there. I'd lurk inside, and it's the weird thing. When someone came to talk to me, I'd go away, and it's a weird thing. I always felt drawn to the synagogue and to that street. And whenever I find myself in Tamar, I always go to. I always find myself navigating to that street, and things intensified. And I think now I have to mention Jehovah's Witnesses because I think Jehovah's Witnesses also help me move towards Judaism, even though they also have a pretty bad idea of Jews. But I started reading the Bible again with them, and the work that they did helped me, reread the Pauline letters that I hate and loathe since I was a child. But they had pretty similar ideas with me. They share some things with Jews. They don't accept God's Trinity and stuff like that. And they brought me back to Judaism. And I started studying the Bible again and seeing all those things that I got to conclusion as a kid. And again, I was talking with them and disagreeing on a lot of things. And there's the thing. When Christians read the Bible, they don't read the Bible from like you read the book from front to back. They read it in passages, and it's like this. They cherry pick the things, and it's like you have a puzzle, and you're supposed to build a puzzle where all the pieces fit. But here's the Christian way. They take the pieces of the puzzle. The puzzle doesn't fit. What the most logical person does is they take the pieces and they try to find the piece that fits, but they don't. What they do is they take a pair of scissors, they cut the edges to make the pieces fit, and then instead of getting a proper image of what it is, you get a mosaic and you don't get the real picture. But it helped me a lot because I was going back to studying the Bible and getting back into all that. And so it really was helpful. I disagreed a lot with them. It's incredible. But the thing is, they are so willing to indoctrinate you that they will talk to you, not like the Catholics. They will try to debate you so they can take you to their side. They never got me to their side, but it built up another stepping stone into my current situation. So I'm sorry again, this is so baggy. So after that situation, I started studying Kabbalah again. It's like I'm telling you, I don't know how many times I stopped and started Kabbalah again. So I started Kabbalah again, and here comes the interesting part. It was around the elections for Trump and where Trump was elected. I lost a lot of friends on Facebook for expressing my political views, and I wanted a place to express my views. So I dug out my old Twitter account and joined Twitter. And here is where my journey starts. I was debating with Catholics and really with a very antagonistic atheist tone. I was so bad. And we started talking with opposing sides. And Then someone talked to me, Mordechai Soames. Uh, he's a journalist for Cheshvan and is really smart. And he steps into the conversation, and he was like, the Catholic was really crazy, really rabid, really sexist. And I am not a feminist. I'm really against feminism. When I say someone is sexist, believe me, he is really sexist. I was opposing that person, and Mordechai found me, and he had an intuition that I was Jewish. And it struck a conversation. We started on opposite sides of the dialogue, and we started corresponding. And he saw me, and he helped me find myself. So he started the first one. The first tweet says, "I don't believe in the same God that you don't believe in." And then it started communicated, PMing me, and he said that I didn't believe in God because I was basically in a false religion, and he helped me go through the things that led me to agnosticism, atheism. So with time, I realized all that, and I admitted that I believed in God. I just didn't believe in Jesus, and um, he wanted me to just be an Noahide, but I couldn't be just an Noahide knowing the truth. And I think in less than 2 weeks of talking with him, I was Jewish. I knew I was Jewish, but it took me a solid 2 months, 2 to 3 months, to accept that my conversion was honest. I wanted to be sure that my conversion was honest. And it's the most amazing thing. I can't explain how that's a couple of weeks of talking to him, I realized I was Jewish. And it's the thing, he had an instinct. He really has a gift to get people closer to God. So I talked to him and started engaging with him, and it's amazing. And I still had bouts of doubt. And here's the most interesting thing of that all is that I realized that my problem with God was never about believing in God. It was not believing in myself. And I have this thing that I feel that I'm like a hologram. And like the thing, at a time I was praying to God a lot. I didn't know how to pray. I still don't know how to pray properly, but I know better now. But I was praying to God. Am I being honest about my wanting to convert? Is this real? Am I being honest? Or am I just converting because of this person? And am I being influenced? Is my conversion honest? And I was really having those, I didn't doubt that I wanted to convert. I wanted to be honest. And then I realized in a lot of things, if I'm so concerned about being honest to God, it's because I'm honest. I mean, if I didn't believe in God, why would I need to be honest about my conversion? Uh, I wouldn't lie to myself. It's like, if I wasn't being honest, why would I care whether I am being honest about my conversion or not? And there's like a few things. And so there was, but at a time I realized I was being honest, but I still hadn't decided to convert. Uh, the decision to convert came, of course, on the 24th of Cheshvan, 13th of November. It was a really bad day. I had bad environment at school, at home. I was crying my heart out. And it's like sometimes I feel dissociation, and I feel like a hologram. And That day was a particularly severe case of feeling like a hologram. So um, I went to bed and I laid there in a fetal position and I couldn't feel my body. It felt like I was in a vacuum and it was cold, really cold, and I couldn't feel my body. It was really weird. I wasn't myself. It's like I know I'm myself, but I it's like you have the sensation of your reality that you're not real, and it's like everything around you is real, but you're not real. And I was crying and I was praying and I needed answers. And again, this is the weirdest thing. The answer I was needing came through the most unexpected way. Um, so I was feeling like a hologram, that I didn't exist, that I'm not real at that point. And I was asking for answers. And I was crying. And at the time, I had my computer turned off. But I had the instinct to turn on the computer. And it was really hard because I couldn't feel my hands. I don't know why I didn't feel my hands, but I turned on the computer. I go to Twitter and Mordechai had written that tweet that made it all. So he said, "Can't you see?" And he didn't know about my predicament. Bear in mind that he had the instinct to pull over. He was driving at the time and tweet that. He didn't know why. He just had a voice in his head kind of thing, like say, "Go write this now, tweet that now, and stop everything and do that." And it was at the exact moment I was needing it. And the tweet said, basically, "Can't you see? You exist. Existence exists. Isn't that God enough for you?" And then it clicked that all throughout my life, I always believed in God. It wasn't in God that I didn't believe in, it was in my own existence. So that was the missing link. My disbelief in God was not a disbelief in God, it was a disbelief in my own existence. So I questioned God's existence because I questioned my own existence, and that made a lot of sense. And that's when I decided to convert. It was such a powerful moment I can't even begin to describe. And so that's it. That's basically how I decided to convert. And then I started discovering my Jewish ancestry, the little things that my family had that were Jewish. I started discovering a lot of things, and it was pretty amazing how much I learned. And then started the anti-Semitism again, and it's scary how much people can hate Jews and how much it's like when they're it's really scary. But I know now more than ever, after all I've been through, that my conversion is honest, and this is the right path for me. And so this is my first anniversary, and just wanting to share a few things. There's a lot more, but I don't want to talk about the bad things. I don't want to talk about anything else than just my journey. And I'm discovering more and more Jewish things about me. It's so weird. Oh, funny fact. When I was in high school, one of my favorite painters was Marc Chagall. And I did a lot of things connected to Judaism that I didn't know of as a teen. And it's really amazing how much Judaism has been present in my life without me even being aware of. And here's the thing, the fact that I didn't find out about Judaism was because Judaism is painted in a very negative light lights where I live. And so a lot of Kurde Jews don't know who they are and have been negatively conditioned against Judaism. But the spark is there. And so, yeah, now I'm trying my best, and I think I got a way to get some money. I still have my fundraisers because I want to convert, and I don't know when I'm going to get paid for translating things, and so I'm going to keep the fundraisers going. Such an important thing to me, especially now that I'm being such a, suffering a lot of anti-Semitism. You have no idea how people that are supposed to love you hate Judaism so much that they don't see you as human anymore. All they see is the evil Jew. And it's the thing, even before I decided to convert on the internet, the Nazis would call me Jew, and a lot of people would call me Jew without me being Jewish. And it's just so weird that I never researched Judaism in terms of that aspect of me. Anyway, that's it for this live video. And I know there was someone watching at a certain point and stopped watching. Thank you for listening to me. And yeah, thanks everyone that kept that's going to watch after I end the transmission. I just wanted to do something special. I'm alone, but I still have God on my side, and there will be brighter days. Anyway, thanks and goodbye.